Before the One Ring, before the eye burned atop Barad-dûr, he was called Mairon, the Admirable, not a tyrant, not yet. He was a Maia, a divine spirit, like Gandalf, like Saruman. He shaped, he perfected, he brought order, but in his quest to fix the world, he chose control and fell into darkness. Who was Sauron before the forging of the One Ring? Hello everyone, and welcome to Storyteller's Codex. Here, we delve deep into the rich lore of the Lord of the Rings, a song of ice and fire, and the vast worlds beyond. Welcome. Long before he became a figure of terror, Sauron was known by another name, Mairon, a word that means the Admirable. He was not a monster. He was a Maia, a lesser spirit shaped by the thought of Eru Ilúvatar, the One. He belonged to the same spiritual order as Gandalf and Saruman. But where they wandered and wondered, Mairon worked. He was drawn to Aulë, the great smith of the Valar, master of craft, stone, and structure. It was under Aulë that Mairon honed his powers. He learned how to bend flame into form, how to bring harmony out of chaos, to forge, to organize, to perfect. He did not desire domination, not yet, but he did crave efficiency. He needed order, and in that, the seeds of his fall were already planted. To Mairon, flaws were intolerable, entropy was the enemy, and he believed the world was broken, because it lacked a single will to shape it. He loved beauty, but only when it was controlled. He loved order, but only when it was absolute. This was not evil, not at first. It was pragmatism, a kind of divine perfectionism that made him brilliant, but also brittle. And as the ages passed, Mairon began to notice another power, one far greater than his master Aulë, a being who also sought to bring the world under his will, one who hated chaos even more. His name was Melkor, and Mairon began to listen. Mairon did not fall in a moment. He did not crave destruction or chaos. What he wanted was control. The world in his eyes was broken, divided, inefficient, unfinished, and none of the Valar, not even Aulë, seemed willing to impose the order he believed was necessary. Then he looked to Melkor. Melkor, later called Morgoth, the first and greatest of the Ainur, the rebel, the challenger of Eru's vision, and yet, the only one with the will to reshape the world. Where Aulë taught harmony, Morgoth promised dominion, not through patience or craft, but through force. To Mairon, this was not madness. It was clarity. He saw in Morgoth the power to unify the world, to bend it to a single purpose, and in that purpose, Mairon saw what he believed to be peace. This was the great tragedy. He did not believe he was becoming evil. He believed he was becoming effective. He gave himself fully to Morgoth, not as a slave, but as a lieutenant, and soon he became more than that. He became Morgoth's heir. His talents were twisted, his brilliance bent toward domination. He learned fear and how to wield it. He learned sorcery, deception, torture, control. He helped raise fortresses and forge armies. He experimented on life, twisting beasts, spirits, and even men. He did not just follow the will of darkness, he learned how to make darkness follow his. Mairon, the Admirable, was gone, and Sauron had begun to rise. The First Age was not ruled by Sauron. It was ruled by Morgoth, the true Dark Lord. But behind Morgoth's throne stood a shadow just as cunning and just as deadly. Sauron had become his most trusted servant. He commanded in his master's name. He oversaw fortresses, armies, he twisted beasts and tortured minds. And while Morgoth was a figure of raw power and chaos, Sauron was something more dangerous. He was precise. Where Morgoth bludgeoned, Sauron calculated, he became the keeper of secrets, the architect of strategy, and during this time Sauron created some of his most infamous horrors. Among them, the stronghold of Tolin Gorhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. There he reigned with terror and sorcery. It was a place where elves were captured, broken, and bent into darkness. One such captive was Finrod Felagund, the noble elven king. Finrod gave his life resisting Sauron's power, and it was only through the arrival of Luthien, a mortal woman of immense courage, that Sauron was defeated. She did not slay him, but she shattered his form and forced him into retreat. It was one of the only times in all the ages that Sauron was truly bested, not by might, but by music, by light, by love. Even so, he learned. He grew more cautious, more secretive. He did not make the same mistakes twice. Sauron was no longer simply Morgoth's weapon. He was his successor, and when Morgoth fell, it was Sauron who remained. When Morgoth fell at the end of the First Age, many of his servants were hunted, captured, or destroyed. But Sauron vanished. He did not march at the final battle. He did not defend his master at Angband. When the Valar came, Sauron was gone. Why? Some say he fled out of fear, that he saw the host of the West, and realized that even his power could not stand against the fury of the gods. Others say it was shame. Tolkien tells us that Sauron actually repented, briefly, that he considered surrendering to the judgment of the Valar. But in the end he could not bear the humiliation. To bow, to be judged, to admit failure, it was unthinkable. So he hid. And for a time, Middle-earth forgot him. But while he was gone from the world of kings and cities, he was not idle. Sauron watched, waited, learned. He studied the ways of the elves. He observed the hearts of men, and he began to understand something Morgoth never had. Corruption doesn't always need force. Sometimes it just needs a promise. And so, in the Second Age, he emerged again, not as a tyrant, not as a warlord, but as a friend. When Sauron returned in the Second Age, he did not come with fire and armies. He came in golden form, as a teacher, as a guide, as a friend. He called himself Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and to the elves of Eregion he offered wisdom. He showed them secrets of craftsmanship, taught them how to bend metal, stone and magic into something greater. He spoke of beauty, harmony, healing. He never mentioned Morgoth. He never revealed his past. To the elves he was simply a marvel, but it was all a lie. Sauron had discovered a far more effective way to control the world, not through chains, but through gifts. Under his guidance, the elves forged powerful rings, the rings of power, objects of beauty, but also of influence, and in secret. Sauron forged one more, a master ring, one that would control all the others, the One Ring. It was the culmination of everything he had learned: craft, deception, domination. And when he slipped it on his finger, his mask fell away. The elves saw him for what he was, and they recoiled in horror. But by then, it was too late. The Age of Annatar was over. The Age of Sauron had truly begun. Sauron was not born a monster. He was a being of light, of order, of purpose. And yet, he became the greatest shadow of the Second and Third Ages. Why? Because the tragedy of Sauron isn't just that he turned to evil, it's that he did so believing he was doing what was right. He believed in structure, he craved unity, and he was willing to sacrifice freedom to achieve it. He learned from Morgoth's failure. He chose deception over violence, and he nearly succeeded. He seduced the elves, corrupted men, deceived Numenor. And even after his body was destroyed, his spirit endured. Because Sauron was never just a warlord. He was an idea that order is more important than freedom, that domination can bring peace, that if you just control enough, you can fix the world. That is what makes him so chilling, and why, even without the ring, his shadow still lingers. If you are interested in The Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, click one of the links on the screen to dive deeper into the lore. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.